Whispers of the Forgotten Letters. The little town of Ashbourne was known for its quiet streets, its golden sunsets, and its gentle river that flowed like a silver ribbon through the valley. Among the cobblestone lanes stood an old bookshop called the Lantern House. It was small, dimly lit, and filled with the scent of ink and dust. And it was there, beneath shelves stacked with forgotten novels, where Emma first met Daniel. Emma had just moved to Ashbourne to take a teaching job at the local school. She loved books more than anything, and the Lantern House became her safe place after long days. One chilly evening, as she reached for a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice, her hand brushed against someone else's. She looked up to see a man with kind eyes and a quiet smile. "Sorry," he said softly, pulling his hand back. "You take it. I've already read it a dozen times." Emma smiled. "Then maybe you can tell me if it's worth reading again." That was how it began. Two strangers bound by the love of words. Daniel, she learned, was a writer. He lived in a cottage near the edge of town, writing stories that he never seemed to publish. Instead, he kept them folded into letters, sealed with wax, and stored in a wooden box. He told her he wrote them for someone he once loved but never sent them. Emma listened in silence, sensing the quiet ache in his voice. She didn't ask more, but every time they met at the shop, every time they walked by the river, or sat under the lantern glow, she wondered who those letters were for. As weeks turned into months, their bond grew. Daniel would bring her fresh flowers pressed between pages of books. Emma would read aloud her favorite poems, her voice carrying softly through the night air. They began to laugh together, share secrets, and create a rhythm that felt like home. One evening in early spring, Daniel invited her to his cottage. The house smelled of cedarwood and candle wax. On his desk lay the wooden box, slightly open. Emma's eyes lingered on it, but she said nothing. Instead, Daniel poured them tea and asked her about her childhood dreams. She told him she once believed she would find love in the most unexpected place. Daniel only smiled, but something flickered in his gaze. A few days later, Emma received a letter. It wasn't delivered by post, it was tucked inside one of her books at the Lantern House. The handwriting was Daniel's. She unfolded it carefully, her heart racing. "Emma, there are words I have written for years but never spoken. They were meant for a love I thought I lost, yet every page has led me here, to you. You filled my silence with laughter, my loneliness with light. If you are reading this, then know, the letters in that wooden box no longer belong to the past. They belong to you. Daniel." Emma's hands trembled. Tears blurred the ink, but she smiled. She ran through the quiet streets, the evening sky painted with fire and gold, until she reached his cottage. Daniel stood outside, as if he had been waiting. No words were needed. She walked straight to him, and he gathered her into his arms. The river whispered in the distance, the lanterns glowed, and in that moment, both of them knew, love had finally found its place. From then on, the letters were no longer sealed away. They wrote them together, every page a promise, every word a whisper of a forever that had just begun. Whispers beneath the lantern sky. The small riverside town of Alberton was always wrapped in a gentle, timeless charm. By day, its narrow cobbled streets carried the faint scent of blooming jasmine, and by night, the lanterns that hung from every porch lit the town with a golden glow, as if stars had descended to live among the people. It was here, in this town of quiet beauty, that Clara and Elias's story began. Clara was a teacher at the little school by the river. She was gentle, thoughtful, and loved by her students. Her days were filled with books, laughter, and the sound of chalk brushing against the blackboard. Yet when dusk fell and the last child had gone home, she often felt a lonely silence creep into her heart. She would walk home along the riverbank, where the lanterns reflected in the water like scattered fragments of a dream. Elias, on the other hand, was a painter who had returned to Alberton after years of wandering from city to city. His canvases carried color stolen from sunsets, mountains, and oceans, yet his heart always longed for the quiet river where he had grown up. He set up a small studio in town, painting during the day and watching the lanterns at night, hoping to find something, or perhaps someone, that could finally give meaning to the images that lived in his mind. Their paths first crossed one rainy evening. Clara had stayed late at school, organizing books, and as she hurried home, the rain grew heavier. She stopped beneath an old oak tree, clutching her umbrella that had already begun to fail her. Through the curtain of rain, she saw a man painting beneath a wooden awning, his easel set toward the river despite the storm. The lantern light fell on his face as he worked with quiet determination. "You're painting in the rain?" Clara asked, half curious, half concerned, raising her voice over the downpour. Elias looked up, his eyes bright with a spark of mischief. "The world doesn't wait for the weather to be perfect," he replied. "Sometimes beauty hides in the storm." Clara laughed softly, a sound that carried even through the rain. That moment, small and fleeting, was the beginning. From then on, their encounters became more frequent. At first, it was chance. Passing by each other in the market, greeting by the riverbank, or meeting under the lantern-lit streets. Then, it was intention. Elias would wait near the school with sketches in his notebook, and Clara would linger on the bridge, knowing he might be there. Slowly, gently, their lives began to weave together like threads in a tapestry. Elias painted Clara often, sometimes without her noticing, capturing her silhouette as she read by the river, or her smile as she helped her students. When he finally showed her the collection, Clara's eyes softened. "You see me," she whispered, "in ways I didn't even know I could be seen." Clara, in turn, shared with Elias her love for stories. In the quiet of his studio, she would read aloud to him, tales of faraway kingdoms, of love that endured across lifetimes, of promises kept beneath starlit skies. Elias would close his eyes and listen, as though each word was a brushstroke painting something within his heart. One summer night, during the Lantern Festival, the town gathered by the river to release floating lanterns into the sky. Each flame carried a wish, a hope, or a memory. Clara and Elias stood side by side, the glow of a lantern between their hands. "What will you wish for?" Clara asked softly. Elias looked at her, the golden light dancing in her eyes. "I don't need to wish," he said. "What I want is right here." Her heart trembled at his words, and in that moment, as their lantern rose into the sky, Clara realized she no longer felt the loneliness that once followed her. Years passed, but the magic of that night never faded. Clara's laughter continued to fill Elias's canvases, and his colors filled the spaces of her world with light. Together, they walked through storms and sunlit days, always returning to the river where it all began, where lanterns whispered their promises against the night sky, and where two souls had found each other in the quiet heart of Alverton. The Bridge of Stars. The small town of Rivermere was known for two things: its quiet charm and its old stone bridge, which stretched gracefully over the river. People called it the Bridge of Stars because, on clear nights, the water below mirrored the sky so perfectly that it felt as though the stars had doubled. Clara had lived in Rivermere her whole life. She was a librarian, gentle and thoughtful, someone who found beauty in the silence of books and the turning of pages. Yet, beneath her calm smile, she carried a quiet longing. She wanted love, not the fleeting kind, but the kind that felt like home. Ethan arrived one autumn afternoon. He was an architect from the city, sent to Rivermere to survey the bridge for restoration. With his leather satchel and sketchbook always in hand, he seemed different from everyone else in town, restless, searching, as though he had never found a place that truly belonged to him. Their first meeting was simple. Clara was shelving books in the library when Ethan walked in, brushing the autumn leaves off his coat. "Do you have anything about the history of the bridge?" he asked. Clara looked up, surprised. "The Bridge of Stars?" "Of course." She guided him to a shelf where an old, dust-covered book rested. Over the following weeks, Ethan visited the library often. At first, it was always about research, maps, photographs, structural records, but gradually, their conversations shifted. They spoke about art, music, and dreams. Clara told him how, as a child, she used to stand on the bridge and wish on the stars reflected in the water. Ethan admitted he had stopped believing in wishes long ago. One evening, Clara found him sketching the bridge by the river. She hesitated, then sat beside him. The autumn air was cool, and the sky blushed with fading light. "Why did you stop believing in wishes?" she asked softly. Ethan paused, his pencil still against the paper. "Because wishes don't build anything. Hard work does. I've seen too many things fall apart waiting for something magical to happen." Clara smiled faintly. "Maybe wishes don't build bridges, but they can build hope. And hope keeps us walking across." Her words lingered in his mind long after she left. As weeks turned to months, they grew closer. Ethan began to look forward to the library not just for research, but for Clara's presence. She, in turn, found herself watching the clock, waiting for the moment he might walk through the door. One winter night, snow-blanketed Rivermere. The bridge sparkled under lanterns, and the river glowed with reflected stars. Clara and Ethan walked together, their breaths misting in the air. "I have to return to the city soon," Ethan said, his voice quiet. "The restoration project is nearly done." Clara's heart tightened. "And after that?" He looked at her, his dark eyes softened by the snowlight. "I don't know. I've never stayed anywhere long." She stopped walking, her hands trembling in her pockets. "Then maybe, this time, you should." Ethan stared at her, as though the words were a map he had been waiting for. For the first time in years, he felt the possibility of belonging, of building something not with bricks or beams, but with love. He reached for her hand, warm against the cold night. "If I stay, will you be my reason?" Clara's eyes glistened, and she nodded. "Always." The bridge above them gleamed with snow and stars, a witness to their beginning. And in that small town of Rivermere, a love quietly bloomed, not hurried, not fleeting, but steady, like the river beneath the bridge of stars.